The rain had been falling for hours, turning the narrow streets into muddy reflections of flickering streetlights. When Amina sat quietly on the edge of the pavement, clutching the thin shawl around her shoulders as if it were the only thing holding her together, she had nothing, no home, no family, no certainty of tomorrow, yet her eyes still held something rare, softness. That same softness drew the attention of a small girl standing nearby, her polished shoes splashed with rainwater, her expensive coat too big for her tiny frame. The girl, Zara, had wandered away from her car while her father argued on the phone, and now stood alone, frightened but trying not to cry. Amina noticed her immediately, not because of the clothes, but because she recognized that silent fear. Slowly, gently, she knelt beside her, speaking in a voice so warm it cut through the cold air. She offered no money, no food, just comfort, wiping the girl's tears with the edge of her own worn scarf. A few steps away, Daniel, Zara's father, ended his call with visible frustration. A wealthy businessman used to control. He turned to find his daughter missing, and panic struck him harder than anything money could fix. His eyes scanned the street wildly, until they landed on a scene that confused him. A ragged woman, sitting beside his daughter, holding her hand. Instinctively, suspicion filled his mind. He rushed forward, his voice sharp and protective, pulling Zara close. But instead of fear, Zara clung to Amina, whispering, "She helped me." That single sentence made him pause. He looked at Amina properly for the first time, not as a stranger, not as a threat, but as someone who had just done what he hadn't noticed needed to be done. Still, Daniel's world didn't allow easy trust. He offered money, assuming it would settle the moment, but Amina refused quietly. She just needed someone, she said, her voice steady despite the cold. That answer lingered in Daniel's mind long after he drove away. For the first time in years, he felt something unfamiliar. Guilt, because despite everything he had given his daughter, he realized he had missed something priceless. Presence. Days passed, but Zara wouldn't stop talking about the kind lady. Her words weren't dramatic or exaggerated. They were simple, but they carried weight. "She listened to me," Zara said one evening, as Daniel absent-mindedly nodded while working on his laptop. But that sentence stayed with him. Listening, something he hadn't done in a long time. Eventually, against his usual routine, he found himself returning to that same street, almost hoping to see Amina again. And he did. She was there, sitting quietly, feeding crumbs to birds as if they were her companions. This time, Daniel approached differently, without arrogance, without assumptions. Zara ran to her instantly, hugging her as if they had known each other forever. Amina smiled, surprised but genuinely happy. Daniel watched the interaction, something shifting inside him as he saw his daughter laugh more freely than she ever did at home. It wasn't toys or luxury or comfort, it was connection. Over the next few weeks, an unspoken routine formed. Daniel would bring Zara, and they would spend time with Amina, sometimes talking, sometimes just sitting together. Amina never asked for anything. She didn't try to impress or take advantage. She simply was. And that presence slowly began to heal something broken in both father and daughter. Zara became more open, more joyful. Daniel, though reluctant to admit it, began to feel less alone. But society didn't see it that way. Whispers started. A wealthy man spending time with a homeless woman? People questioned his judgment, his intentions, even his sanity. His colleagues warned him. His family disapproved. "She has nothing to offer," they said. But Daniel, for the first time in his life, wasn't convinced by wealth-based logic, because what he saw every day contradicted it completely. The turning point came unexpectedly. Zara fell ill, seriously ill, and Daniel's world collapsed into fear and urgency. Hospitals, doctors, specialists, he used every resource money could buy. Yet despite it all, Zara remained withdrawn, scared and restless. One night, in a moment of desperation, she whispered a name, Amina. Daniel hesitated. Bringing a homeless woman into a hospital felt unconventional. But then again, nothing about this situation had been conventional. When Amina arrived, something extraordinary happened. Zara's anxiety softened almost instantly. Amina didn't bring medicine or solutions. She brought calm. She held Zara's hand, told her gentle stories, and sat beside her through the night. Daniel watched from a distance, realizing something deeply uncomfortable yet undeniable. Everything he had provided couldn't replace what Amina gave so effortlessly: emotional safety. Days later, Zara began to recover. The doctors called it progress, but Daniel knew better. He had seen the shift. He had felt it. Standing in the hospital hallway, he finally confronted the truth he had been avoiding. When people said Amina had nothing to offer, they were measuring value in the wrong currency. When Zara was discharged, Daniel did something unexpected. He invited Amina to stay, not as charity, not as obligation, but as someone who mattered. Amina hesitated, unsure if she belonged in such a world. But Zara's small hand holding hers made the decision for her. Life didn't transform overnight, but it changed in ways that mattered. Amina moved into a small guest house on Daniel's property, not as an outsider, but as part of their lives. She remained humble, never forgetting where she came from, but she also began to rebuild herself. Daniel, in turn, began to rebuild something else: his understanding of life. He started spending more time with Zara, learning to listen instead of just provide. Their home, once silent despite its luxury, slowly filled with warmth. Laughter replaced distance. Presence replaced absence. And at the center of it all was a woman who had once been invisible to the world. One evening, during a formal gathering, someone asked Daniel bluntly, "Why her? What does she even bring to your life?" The room fell silent, waiting for a logical answer. But Daniel didn't speak like a businessman that night. He spoke like a father. "She gave my daughter something I couldn't buy," he said calmly. "Kindness. And in doing that, she gave me my daughter back." There was no argument after that, because some truths don't need explanation. And some people, no matter how little they have, carry the greatest wealth of all.